the NOAA Weather Radio's warning device. The preceding signal was a test of the weather radio station's public warning system.
Hey, this is Pete from 21st Century Prepper. Today's podcast, we're going to be discussing severe weather, especially tornadoes, and mostly in the Midwest, and we'll talk about other areas of the country. I have Skip with me tonight.
Good evening, everybody.
And Crystal.
Hello.
David.
Hello.
And Richard.
Hey, guys.
So we got a good chunk of the country covered. I'm in the upper Midwest. David and Crystal are in Oklahoma, and Richard's in Tennessee, right? Kentucky.
Yep.
And then Skip is out east in Maryland. So, David, you recently did a class or something about severe weather?
Yeah, and that'd be something that probably everyone would, if they had an opportunity to take, would be this CERT, this Community Emergency Response Training. And they go through we took it over the period of about a month. It was like one weekend or on weekends. And it was everything from storm identification to the search and rescue that went on when it was over with.
That'd be cool. What did they all discuss about prior to storms? How do you guys handle it down there?
The way that we went through was that it was more after the aftermath of the storm. And it would have been going into an area, you basically search and rescue. You identified, people, marked where they were at to get rescue in, triage to this was something, it's a high-speed operation. They didn't want you spending a lot of time. Basically, your triage, you mark the site. That way you can get emergency services into it, and they can handle the emergency response. You're more of an identifying team.
Okay. Like a spotter or something, go in and find the injured and whatever, and mark them and go on to the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, it's a pretty fluid response.
Okay. Crystal, how do you prepare for? I mean, you're smack dab Tornado Alley. How do you prepare for the weather?
Well, we prepare pretty much like you would any other event, weather events, but just a few key differences. When you're dealing with tornadoes, your best bet is to obviously recognize what the weather might be doing earlier in the day. If you have news reports, they're probably going to be talking about the change in the weather. Usually tornadoes occur when you have a hot air mass and a cold air mass mixing. So just kind of situational awareness throughout storm season. But if you do have indication that something's going to happen, obviously have a place picked out in your home that is either obviously underground is best, but if you don't have that, something interior of the house, so your lowest level, no windows, generally a bathroom that you can get the family in. So just kind of have that in mind of where you would go. Make sure you're watching the weather. Make sure you have a weather radio that can either be battery powered or hand cranked. Know what your weather stations are. You're going to have tornadoes aren't an event like a hurricane where it can be days. You're talking about a matter of minutes, maybe possibly hours, depending on the event itself. So you're not going to have to, you're not going to have days and days and days of stockpiled of food, and you're not going to have that a big evacuation plan. So there is a little bit different, but really it's just a lot of common sense. Don't be out on the road. If you do find yourself out on the road, make sure that, if you're in the area that's affected, you don't want to stay in your car. You don't want to get under an underpass, excuse me. You just want to be safe. Tornadoes don't fool around, and they're also very unpredictable. They jump around, so you really need to have your situational awareness up in high gear.
Yeah, just being aware of what's going on around you is the biggest deal. Whether you get an alert from the news station or not, you know what the weather. If you know what the weather's doing, you should be aware of it before the beeper starts going off or your phone starts chirping at you that there's severe weather. So
Right.
it's tough when you're like at school or at work, or if you're in the cubicle in the middle of a building, you don't necessarily know what's going on. But just being aware of what the day is like, and they can forecast pretty well. The severity is obviously something that changes, but they don't really pop out of nowhere. They usually have a good indication of something's going to happen.
Right.
They can happen real quickly, but the buildup does take a little bit of time. So
Right.
and so the awareness is a major factor. Richard, you're kind of on the east side of Tornado Alley. How do they treat the weather like that out there? I mean, you guys get nailed by some pretty good storms.
Yeah, we've lost several schools and multiple dwellings. I grew up in Arkansas, just across the river from Memphis, and now live on the Memphis side of right in that tri-state area of Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, and they do get a lot. One thing they have in common, most of the preparedness stuff that Crystal was talking about is the same thing. I would tell you, center of the house. If you don't have a room without windows, door jams, same thing as an earthquake. But we have, during tornado season, we have a bag ready to go in the bathroom with us, with things like identification and stuff like that we can have, and we'll drag a mattress in there if we think it's likely to cover the bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
Structurally, it's pretty sound. As far as the buildup, you can tell here. I don't know about other places because I know more about this place. But when the sky is looking gray and rainy, no big deal. When it starts to take on a greenish tint,
Yes, sir.
Yep.
you have likelihood of rotation. I don't know why that is. I couldn't tell you all the technical details. I'm sure we could look it up, but when it goes green, when it starts to look gray, green, or green, it's time to get in the house and get into the safe area and be ready for something. About 2 years ago, I watched one come down. I was standing on our front porch looking out across our fields, and I watched one form, drop, dig a hole in my field, and go back up in the clouds in a space of less than 5 minutes.
Very much the same here.
I was just gonna say, when you said, you see that green, you gotta head for safety. And I was gonna say, don't stand in your driveway with a beer. Going, hey, look at that.
Take your beer in the bathroom with you and take an extra one in case it takes longer than 5 minutes.
Take a 12-pack with you. And you might be, if the house is knocked down around, you might be there for a little while. Take the whole 12-pack.
Yeah, I don't know about other places. We have F4s and F5s around here. I've seen drinking straws jammed into a fence post.
Oh yeah.
I have seen 2x4s jammed through a foot wide oak tree.
Yeah, so, it's some powerful stuff. It's nothing to.
It's very high pressure. That's the reason. That's right. That's the reason you don't stand out there. Just because you're not in the center of the funnel doesn't mean you're not going to catch something. So.
Oh yeah, something can come flying out. That one time.
That's right.
Well,
You're standing there, and you're the only person around. And that board is going to come flying, or that shingle, like a ninja star, is going to come flinging through the sky, and
everything around you is a weapon or a projectile.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and there's no one else standing around, and your head's going to go right off because you just. I'm really good on the golf course when someone's standing ahead of me. I can put a ball right at them. I need people to stand on the green, and I can hit the ball to the green every time.
Well, that's one theory the golfers have down here. If a tornado pops up, just grab a 1-iron because nobody can hit a 1-iron.
I'm kind of in the upper part of Tornado Alley where I was explaining on our chat today as we were preparing for this podcast that I'm kind of in an odd location here in Minnesota because we have the jet stream just to the west of us where it takes a dip. So we have severe weather. We've had F4s and 5s in the state before, and we have lots of smaller tornadoes, but nothing really huge and big. We don't have the Rockies. The Rockies are a little farther west here than they are in Colorado or in Montana. Kind of veers up and it shoots at an angle up into Canada. So we don't have that big buildup of the storms coming over top, and then we're too far away from the Gulf to get that as much warm, moist air up here because you guys get to have it dump on you before it gets here. But definitely we have them. The town 25 miles away from us got hit a few years back, and people were totally oblivious to what was going on. And I think I mentioned it in our other podcast about the storm prep. The people were out, mowing the lawns and watering their yards, and as the storm chasing team came through town yelling at them to seek shelter because the tornado was coming and they had no clue. But so our weather teams around here are good at it. I think they're much more techie down there and much more on it down where you guys are because of the severity and the frequency. So they track them well up here and they know they're coming and what's going to happen possibly would happen. But I think you guys have much more on it down there than we do up here. So as far as stuff around the house, what's everybody do for their house, and what should you do if a tornado takes out your house? What are some steps that people can do?
One of the things we take in the bag is make sure we've got our phones, make sure I'm a ham operator, so I've got a portable radio, identification, and the list of phone numbers. You don't know other places in the country your relatives live, they'll hear about what's going on. Let them know what's going on. You've got it if somebody around you. I live in a rural community, so nobody's going to be here real quick to do anything. You got to help your neighbors, and it may be that you've got a phone or got something with you that you can help them with. So, basic first aid, a couple of days of food and water, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, make sure you have cash, your credit cards, phone charger, any pertinent information or medication that you might have to have. Something else I thought of too, as it's happening, obviously before it's happening, but when you go into your little hidey hole, or whether it's underground or in your bathroom, let people know where you are. There's been situations here where most of the house is gone, and people are freaking out, or there's debris over the entrance of their storm shelter, things like that. Just letting people know that, hey, our family is in there. That way they know. Make sure your storm shelter is registered. That way local fire departments, things like that, know of it. I would suggest having a whistle. You're going to be able to blow on that whistle a lot longer and a lot harder than you are going to yell if it ever comes to that. That's some things that a lot of people wouldn't think of, but it's in our little baggie. Just pretty much what you would need in a bug out bag. It's not going to be any different than that. It's going to be for tornado season or your storm season. So there's not a whole lot of differences. But the whistle is something that we have that a lot of people may not think about. But I think it's important to let people know where you are. Let them know that you're home, and if you're in your storm shelter, and just have a whistle.
Mm-hmm. I actually have a whistle in my bug out bag, so sometimes you want to be. A lot of preppers are. I don't want to be found. I don't want to be seen. There are going to be times where you want to be found and want to be seen. So
this may be one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I would add that we have like a lot of houses, we have more than one bedroom. That person's bag is in the bedroom with them, because it's not altogether impossible or even uncommon for a tornado to pop up and do what it's going to do before you have a chance to wake up.
Oh,
Sure.
Well, on that note, the National Weather Service here recommends that you, if you're expecting severe weather, that you have your shoes next to your bed, because one thing you don't want to do is be walking around barefoot after a tornado hits. You have your cell phone in your shoes. You have your wallet and your keys in your shoes. That way, everything's right there and ready to go as soon as it hits.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that's good. Good tips there.
Yep.
Yeah. My pants are loaded.
Well, Richard, we don't have to discuss your problem. I know getting older leads to some issues, but we don't.
Nice.
I'm getting up there. I'm getting up there. I can't wait for it, personally, but
I went with. I had to give somebody an option, right? And I'm turning it up. Got my wallet. I've got my pockets. Just like I'm wearing my pants, all I do is take them off and hang them on the bedpost.
yeah. I should probably start. Well, I need to. Here, I'll open the gate. I need to wear pants.
Dang it.
I work at home. My wardrobe consists of gym shorts and gym pants. So, I mean, today I had pants on because it was a little chilly outside. The wind was, our snow is gone, but it was only 55 degrees today, and there was a breeze, so there was still wind chill. But I don't have jeans or 511s that are ready to go because I don't wear them that often because I work at home. I hate hanging my wallet in my gym. Have you ever tried to carry a wallet in a pair of gym shorts?
It doesn't work out well.
That's funny.
But maybe I should do that. Maybe. Yeah, I got to start doing that because my phone is in one place, my wallet's in another place, my keys are in another place. So yeah, that makes sense. I gotta change that up. I'll have to get a fanny pack or something.
Dora, man. It's got to be Dora.
Yeah, hey, that's a new product. 21st century prepper fanny packs.
Dora the Explorer.
Elmo.
Yeah, Elmo, that's right.
Yeah, Elmo fanny packs. That'll be great. $29.95. Okay. Some of the things around the house. Know where your gas shutoff is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have natural gas, obviously. If you don't have natural gas, don't keep walking around looking for it because you don't have gas.
Water too.
Water.
Yeah.
Even be able to flip off your electric because maybe a chunk of your house is gone or a big chunk of your roof or something is gone. There's still possibly live wires or whatever. Just click off all your electric. What else would there be? What else should...
I would say bracing your garage door is very important, or the ability to, if you know a storm's coming, because if you look at 90% of mild tornado damage, and when I say mild, I mean F1, F2, the first thing that usually goes is your garage door, and then it becomes a great big parachute, and that's usually the house that gets ripped off. So that's something you really should look at.
I think I remember the picture you sent me last year.
Yep.
I remember that, yeah.
We'll raise the garage door, and we have a window in the back of the garage. We'll open that.
Something I thought of. Oh, go ahead, Skip. Pete.
No, you go, Crystal.
Well, something I've thought of is now that most of us are kind of walking our way into this season, which is why we're talking about this, that would be a good time to go ahead and just, take pictures of, if you haven't already, the outside of your house, your roof, things like that. That way, if you do have damage, it's a lot easier to show the insurance adjusters, like, hey, this is what it looked like, this is what it looks like now. If you're, because sometimes if it's a light storm, you're going to have some damage, but you're not going to have your house blown away. You still want to be able to show what damage there was so that you can get your, those things fixed.
And for insurance purposes.
Yeah, make sure your insurance is up to date.
Yep.
And, evaluate. Now is the time to evaluate if you want to look at flood insurance. I know generally, depending on how your house is set up, you may or may not need to look at flood insurance, but with these storms, sometimes we get dumped on with a lot of rain. It's not always just worrying about your house blowing away. I mean, rain comes with it, so now's the time to look at your flood insurance and evaluate if you need it or not. Make those adjustments now instead of wishing that you had after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, those flash floods happen quickly, especially if it's
been dry out for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna move quick, and you never know. I mean, look at Houston last year after the hurricane, and that who had flood insurance in there? I bet no one, or very few people. So back to what I was going to say before. Man, I can't remember what it was. I need to get one of those boards.
Now, David, weren't you saying that you got a kit with your class? Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of things came in that kit?
Yeah, there was just a basic first aid, and this was all in a nice backpack, and it's got they give you a tag that, and one of these high visibility vests. I think it's got CERT, C-E-R-T on the front of it to identify you as someone that goes in and does, the rescue and another thing you were talking a few minutes ago about turning your gas, that type of stuff off. The bag that I have, and I think Richard got a different setup. My bag has got adjustable wrench, crescent wrench, whatever you want to call it, in it to turn gas, to turn water off, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
go ahead.
Oh, is that something that people can easily find to place in their own bag? I'm sure you can find that at Lowe's or Home Depot or something.
And we was talking about that the other night, things that you would have in your bug out bag. A good multi-tool would come in handy. I've got a small, I think it's an 8-inch pipe wrench. It's not anything expensive, but you don't ever really know what you're going to get into because these deals, they'll destroy a house. And Crystal had talked about having your residence marked. I've got a storm shelter here where I live, and when they set the shelter, they came out and took a GPS reading of where that was at and registered it in the county at that time. And that's going to be pretty important because they're pretty quick to get on top of where the damage path was, that type of thing. They send people out in the more rural areas, and they start looking just as quick as they can get mobilized and get started on that. And that's one of the ways that they kind of try to determine where they're going to go first.
Yeah, I've never heard of registering a storm shelter, so I doubt they even do that around this area.
Yeah.
So that's new
it's
to
good
me.
tip,
I've never heard of.
Well, and we had talked earlier today when we were in chat, and I went back and made a list of some things, and one of the things that was on that list was you need to develop a communication plan with your family, whoever your significant others are. They may be 15, 20 miles away, maybe in another state. But, that's one of the things. You develop that communication plan, and the people that you're going to be trying to communicate with need to know, and if it's you going out and taking a GPS reading with your phone, or if you've got a Garmin type device, give that to somebody else. And if that way they can call back in if they haven't heard from you. They can call. I guess Red Cross would be one of the points of contact that you could utilize to get that information, to get somebody started looking. Because usually, generally, and you can look back more. Oklahoma, Crystal can tell you about all that. They were inundated with that type of information, and it takes a little bit of time to do it. But you need to make contact with somebody and make them aware of, I've got people here, I haven't heard from them, and they can get them on the list.
Yep.
Skip, you had some info you wanted to share?
Yeah, first I'd say anybody that lives in an area pretty much from the Rocky Mountains to the East Coast, I would recommend them just go on Facebook and like the Storm Prediction Center, because there's times where you can have, right now they're calling for very dangerous weather for Oklahoma 5 days in advance, and they're telling you what days and what areas are really under the gun. So that's a hell of a warning that you need to start getting your stuff together. You know.
And on that, and I don't mean to cut you off, but on that note, I've got a website here pulled up, National Weather Service in Norman.
Yeah.
And I think I posted that to the main site earlier, and it talks about the upcoming weather event. But on that same website, and I would imagine other states have got something similar to this. They've got a severe weather safety and survival, and they've got little tabs on it that you can to click. There's like 3 of them. And each one of them has got they've all got pretty good information. And in that, there is a checklist of things that you might need, to put in your bag or just things to think about that normally you wouldn't think about.
That's really good advice.
Don't forget the pets either. Got to have a plan for your pets.
Oh, I've got a plan for my pet.
Be careful. Okay, for those of us that love our pets, we have a different plan. And something else we got to talk about too is a lot of us that have animals and things like that. Most people that live out in the country, you're not going to want to keep your animals tucked in a barn.
No, let them alone.
I know that kind of goes against what a lot of people think. They're not going to be safe in there. A lot of times we see a lot of people here in Oklahoma, they spray paint their phone number on the side of their horses and on their cows and just kind of let the fences open, let the barn doors open, and just kind of because animals are smart for the most part. They can fend for themselves. But once you start boxing them up with a bunch of, in a wooden barn with a bunch of flying debris, you're going to lose your cattle and your livestock. So, make sure that if you have horses or cows, make sure you've got some identification on them. If they're branded, you got to be thinking about things like that, because that's not something that you can do right quick. But make sure you've got. I've seen people even with those hiking. I guess they're like hiking booty things for their dogs. That way, if there's debris and stuff, they put those on the dog paws. I mean, these are things that you kind of collectively think about. Make yourself a list and then execute it so that you're not in a worse off shape than what you already are based on the damage and all that. So.
Yeah, you don't want to be standing there going, "Hold my beer, Arlene. I got to go tag the cows while the tornado's coming down the road." That's
right.
That's not going to work.
You want to video all that? Put it on.
Yeah, make sure you're wearing a GoPro or something.
See, we get a lot different storms here on the east than you guys get in the west. We get fast spin-ups, violent fast spin-ups that, you'll be here, you'll see a storm on the horizon, and then all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, you got rotation, and you got a F2 going through a mile wide, a mile path, and then it's gone. And
normally those are later at night than
yes.
what we see here in the central part of the United States.
Yeah, because we get the cold air coming down from the Appalachians.
Yeah, usually by here in Oklahoma by 10, 11 o'clock at night, it's all over with.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
And other places that, Minnesota was one that came to mind. Upper Midwest, it's just getting started good about that time.
Right. That's the way it is here, unfortunately. And one thing I tell everybody here on my personal Facebook page is go to sleep with the TV on. You don't have to have the volume on, but if you start hearing thunder, it wakes you up in the middle of the night. You can look right at the bottom of that TV and look for a scrolling tornado warning, tornado watch. And that can save you a lot of heartache in the long run.
Right. I do have one thought. In our area of the country, and I mentioned this on a chat earlier today, they have a couple of television stations here that they just wear you out and get everybody in the world spun up about how dangerous everything is. That promotes viewership. And if you sit there and watch it, it makes you anxious. It makes you fear more than you need to fear. I caution people from letting that kind of thing overwhelm you. Just be ready, like Crystal said. Have a plan, execute it. That's all you can do.
Well, I'm a National Weather Service storm spotter, and I believe that knowledge is power. when it comes to storms. So I agree that they hype up storms, and I get what you're saying, but also if you like the National Weather Service, Facebook pages for your area, generally speaking, they know 2 or 3 days in advance you're going to have a pretty good set of storms coming in. And
they'll update as the situation unfolds.
And
but
also,
they're just giving you information.
Yeah. Also, don't rely just on Facebook or something like that, because the cell tower goes out, internet goes out, you're screwed. That weather radio is your lifeline. You really ought to have a weather radio. If you have a Baofeng radio, program it in there. It's not that hard to do.
Well, something else go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, something else we kind of touched on, but I really want to make this point clear. Don't rely on cell phones. When the Moore tornado hit, I was actually TDY to Arizona, and my mother was a nurse at the time, and we couldn't get a hold of her for the longest time. And I tell you what, that is the longest set of hours I have ever been on this earth, not being able to get a hold of her. Right after that, we decided to get ham radios in all the cars. We have ham radios at each of their houses. We can get a hold of people if we need to. Do not rely on your cell phones. That is a mistake.
Well, and a lot of the ham repeaters around here in the part of the state that I live in have got the capability. If the National Weather Service issues that tornado warning, it will break in over the repeater, and it puts it on the air.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact,
they don't all do that, but a lot of them do.
Well, if you look in your area, one of your repeaters are generally going to be a Skywarn repeater that the guys go through.
That's what this is.
Yeah, that's
Skywarn, and Aries is another one.
Aries and Races. Races is another one. But that's my biggest thing is just knowledge is power. Know what you're dealing with, and keep an eye on the weather, because people are smarter than us, and they're going to tell you something's about to hit. Very, very seldom is a severe storm a surprise to anybody.
Right. Now, David.
Yes. Go ahead.
If there's people out there listening right now that's interested in getting into the classes that you took and that Richard took, what's their first step in looking at trying to find one that they might want to join? What's the starting point?
In Oklahoma, one of the places that you can look at is the State Department of Homeland Security. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, every state is going to have an agency similar to that, if not the same, and they kind of coordinate this class. That's something and I think FEMA may even be involved in that. I haven't looked recently. I took that class about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And but that would be the first place that I would look. Your emergency management people, offices, a lot of times they will advertise that where you can, it's 3 or 4 months down the road. They'll start advertising, to get people signed up. It doesn't. I don't think it costs anything to take it. And one of the perks out of it was that you got the neat backpack, and the first aid kit, and all this is just kind of a building point for kind of what we're going to do. You've got that in your bug out bag and all that, but they'll give you that bag. It's got a checklist in it, and like I said, we'll go mine. We've got adjustable wrenches and some stuff in it, and it's just basic first aid item, water, food, that type of stuff that you would carry with you. But it's if you're into prepping, you'll have that stuff anyway.
Right.
As far as CERT goes here, I don't know where it is everywhere else, but there are 2 or 3 different web pages on tn.gov and a couple of different pages where the certifications contact is listed on the page. You can send them an email and they'll let you know when the next class is.
Right.
And like you said, you can also sign up. I've signed up for all the FEMA emails, and you can tell them which ones you want. So as classes come out or are available in my area, I get an email before that ever happens. And a lot of that is register and take online. Mm-hmm. And then you print your own certificate if you pass with the take. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do it on the computer.
And another neat thing about this CERT group is the county that I live in, the Amateur Radio Club, Pottawatomie County Amateur Radio Club, was the one that actually organized that. And should the situation warrant, they'll activate. They'll get your email address, they get your phone number, your ham radio. They're going to have your call sign, that type of stuff to mobilize. And there again, this kind of falls into, in my mindset, the prepper group. You got a small group of people already that you're probably working with, you're comfortable with, and if you would want to seek out that certification, that might be the group to do it with, because ultimately you're going to end up taking care of yourself.
Right.
See, that's one
the whole
thing.
point of prepping, anyways, is to
Right.
make sure that you can cover yourself.
Yeah,
and
because
your family.
you can't rely on situations, and it's like, and I'm going to reference that more Oklahoma both times. That was a massive event,
Right.
and you can't expect your emergency services to take care of everybody. And that's kind of what you saw. Was there were some people that were prepared for it. They kind of knew what was going on, and they were taking care of themselves. And you got other people incapacitated by injury or whatever circumstances were, that have to rely on emergency services. And those, that was a kind of a make or break situation for some of them.
Yeah, that's one. That's one responsibility as a storm spotter too.
Yeah, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself.
Well, as a storm spotter, your responsibility is to help track the storms. But once you get into an area where there's devastation and damage, you automatically triage, and that's
right.
You're not required to do that. It's the humanitarian thing to do, but you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I found I tried searching for Minnesota CERT or my town CERT. I found nothing until finally I was able to find Homeland Security and Emergency Management and the Minnesota Department of Public Safety.
Right.
Most of the stuff they have here is about man-made incidences.
Man-made incidents, winter weather events.
And it's not a whole lot of weather stuff here, but it's mostly, terrorist incidences and that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna check into it. There's a IPAWS. What is it? Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. What they call it here. There's some training for it. I'm gonna check into that.
Well, Google,
they direct you to FEMA.
Yeah, Google
and of course
races
the National
also.
Weather Service.
Yeah, Google races also if you're a ham radio operator, because that's a pretty good thing to get into for sure.
Right.
Let's see. I was reminded. I totally forgot this up until a couple minutes ago. I think it was 3 years ago. We were at my brother's lake home. It's about 25 miles from here. My sister was visiting from Colorado, and the weather got nasty. And around here, I don't know what it's really odd around here. We have small little storms come through. I don't know if it's some kind of weird lake effect because there's so many lakes around here that big storms don't come in. It all kind of breaks up, especially summer storms. Winter storms are different. Summer storms come in and they're little pocket storms here and there, so this little pocket storm was coming toward us, and his place is just sitting on a foundation because he's 40 feet off the lake, so there's no basement or anything. So we shoved my sister, who was older. She's got you beat by a few years, Richard. And he's got a crawl space under his home, so we shoved her down there. Shoved her daughter with their baby was there, so they went down there. My nephew went down there, and the husband of my niece and I did the hold my beer thing. But we were in the house. We were 5 feet from the hole, so if we had to, we could have gotten in there. He grew up in Florida, so he had seen hurricanes, and he was just enthralled by this because the wind came up and it was whipping. There was no tornado. The closest one was about 10 miles from us. That set down and then was on the ground for just a couple minutes and then shot back up. But yeah, it was quite interesting there for a while because they're yelling up from the hole.
What's going on, right?
And of course the baby's crying, and it was quite the mess. But yeah, we watched the part of the dock get ripped off and float away and that kind of stuff. But I had totally forgotten about that until just a couple of minutes ago. So we do get them here. And I think that storm produced 4 or 5 of them. But like I said, it's just these small little pocket things that just zing down and go away real quick. So I barely saw it. I didn't see any damage on my drive home. I drove through the area that got hit, and there was very little damage, if any. Just some tree branches down and whatnot. So
we usually don't get the long track storms like those guys out there do. But we've had a F4 here, and I actually watched an F3 go across the field from my house, and that's what got me into weather and weather aware, because that's a scary freaking feeling right there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a lot of people may not know what we're talking about when we say F3, F4, F5. Obviously,
Fujita scale.
Higher the number, the worse the tornado system that's coming through.
Based off wind speeds, right?
Yes.
Right, wind speeds. Now F5 is the worst. I forget. I think it's like, David, help me out. Can you remember what the wind speed is?
It's over 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I believe that's what it is.
Yeah. Now, what we haven't talked about, we talked about getting in a storm shelter. We talked about getting, into an interior room of the house. What we haven't talked about that I think is important is not everybody lives in a house. Sometimes you've got apartments, and sometimes you're in a mobile home. For the love of God, if you're in a mobile home and you have a storm system coming in, you need to vacate that mobile home.
Yes.
Now, that's just my personal opinion growing up in Oklahoma and just seeing these trailer homes just look like string cheese when these systems come through. You have nothing of substantial structure around you when the thing comes in. You are in a tin can. That is not the place to be. So, and obviously I'm not speaking down to anybody that is living in one of these. I mean, I grew up in one, so they are what they are. But you would not catch one of us in one when a system comes through, and I hope that gets to somebody that needs to hear that.
We touched on something on another podcast that we probably ought to bring up again, the difference between a warning and a watch, and the difference between a particularly dangerous situation storm. If you see the PDS storm, that's about the strongest wording that all hell's going to break loose from the National Weather Service, so take that very, very seriously. Warning obviously means it's imminent, it's going to happen, and a watch means that there's a very strong possibility it could happen. So if you see the different terminology from the National Weather Service, make sure you know what they're saying.
Yes.
Okay, I looked up the F scale. There's actually an F0.
Yes.
Which is at 40 to 72 miles an hour. F1 is 73 to 112 miles an hour. And F2 is 113 to 157 miles an hour. F3, 158 to 206. F4, 207 to 260. F5 is 261 to 318. And they say here, theoretically, there could possibly be a F6 or an F7. But they don't give any classification for it. So those are the wind speeds. So, I mean, what's the difference between an F3 and an F4? It's 1 mile an hour.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You don't want to see either.
It is what it is, but they have to give it a rating somehow. So.
Well, and they rate those things after the fact.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's rated after the fact.
It's based on damage assessment, width of the storm path, the track of the storm path. There's a lot of things that go into that. It's not something that on TV stations they're real quick to throw those around. And there again, that we were talking a while ago about news sources and all that. You need to find a reputable news source that you can get your information from that's not biased on this deal.
Right, it's not looking for ratings.
Actually,
because they give information, and then people ultimately get this information and they take it for the gospel and make bad decisions with it. So it's going to take a little time to establish somebody that you're comfortable with, but you're not looking for drama, you're looking for factual information.
I actually wanted to question you about something, David, because I know you had said in a previous podcast that when you have, let's say, a long track F5, F4 coming towards you, one of the things you do is you get in your vehicle and you drive out of the path. I believe
Right.
I believe it was the Moore tornado, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't really keep too much track. But I think it was KFOR. Is that the radio, the TV station down there?
Yeah, I think it was.
And what's the guy's name? Gary something.
Gary England.
Yeah, Gary England.
Was the guy that you talked. That was on KWTV.
There you
Channel
go.
9.
I know he took a lot of heat at the Moore tornado because he told people right live on air to get out of the way, and quite a few people, frankly, got killed on highways and interstates because they were gridlocked. So I was wondering what your thought is, because I know you said you do drive around.
Well, in the past, now I've got a storm shelter now, and so that's not going to be, I'll go underground and ride it out there. But the situation you're talking about, that was in 1999. That was one of the, I think, if at the time, probably one of the
Biggest tornadoes,
most damaging of tornadoes in recent history. And that all started about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We listened to it on, it was on TV, it was on radio, everything that you were doing. It was the time of year. We had kids that were in school activities, and they've kind of changed the way they do things now with the schools. They're a little more weather aware, but at the time we were gathering kids up listening to this. And basically, when about 6 o'clock in the evening, we made the decision to leave because the storm was tracking pretty much where I live at now. And fortunately for me, it tracked further north and completely missed us. But we got out, and one of the things I was told as a kid, and I'm not going to testify to the accuracy of this, but if you will drive at right angles to it, about the third or fourth time you make a right turn, you're behind it.
Okay.
And I did that, but I did that on a scale of about, I went about 50 miles before I made my first right turn. The second right turn that I made was about 50 miles. The fourth one was about 50. And then ultimately, I think the last turn was about 75, 80 miles. But by that point in time, it was 9, 10 o'clock at night. The thing had already went by. They were dealing with the aftermath of it. But that's not something that I waited till I saw it and then decided to start driving. That's too late.
Yeah,
they were telling people then, because this thing started up down around, if I remember right, it started down around Chickasha.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't think it really ever picked up speed. I think it was probably at the fastest point was 35, 45 miles an hour. And they were telling people, if you're in a mobile home and some of these structures that they didn't think was going to survive it, get out now.
Yes.
And so that was one of the things that on this list of things that I put together was that you make sure your electronic stuff's charged up, and like we are, they're already talking about it now, and this is for next week. One of the things that you can do, you got phone charger in your car, you got one at the house. When you're in the car, you put the phone on charge, keep it charged up, because you never know when you're going to need it. Another thing, and this may be difficult for people with kids and that type of thing. Keep your vehicle fueled, because one of the things I remember about when we were driving, I had a diesel pickup, had big fuel tanks on it, and I had filled them up just by chance. And every gas station that we drove by, there were lines, and that's not the place you want to be sitting in a line.
Right.
And so you keep your fuel tank topped off, or at least where you can do, you can get out of the line of fire, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to be something that you want to do Wednesday, and the storm's probably going to be, they're talking about it Wednesday morning for Wednesday afternoon. You might get it early in the morning, but that's not something that you want to wait on, because, and that's going to fall into your situational awareness. If you're new to a place, you might want to get with some of the locals and sit down and discuss that, because it's, that could very well be something to save your life.
Right.
Okay. Well, does anybody have anything else? We should probably wrap this up here pretty quick. Anything we've possibly completely missed?
Like I said, I'd made this list earlier, and dang it, I'm going to put it in. I'm going to plug it. and it is basically you start out with your information source, who you're going to use, for your information. Develop it. The second one would be to develop your communication plan with whoever you're going to communicate with. Test the plan. I've already done that with my people, and Facebook is one of them. But there's a lot of different ways that you can communicate with people. But you need to test it, make sure everybody's comfortable with it, and knows what happens if you have problems with it. Get your preps together. For crying out loud, we're all preppers. I hope that's already been taken care of. I sent some of you guys a picture of my bag, and it's not full yet. It's not ready yet, but it will be. Field expedient shortly. Devise a safety plan, and that's going to be, what we were just talking about. If you're going to shelter in place, if you've got errands to run, you might want to kind of try to time that maybe a couple of days earlier, or if you can put it off, you might not want to do that. Is what you feel comfortable with, but you need to have a safety plan because that, when it all starts, it's not a scripted event, and you don't ever know how it's going to end up. We talked about the fuel transfer, keeping your fuel and stuff topped off, electronic items, that type of thing taken care of. When the weather event starts, you need to assess kind of what your situation is, and you're going to know, how you're going to have to leave, or but you already have it done. You've got it thought out. You're not susceptible to influence from stress, because that's going to be something everybody gets stressed out in a hurry on a deal like that. If you need to enact a safety plan, do it, and then when the situation improves, you can activate your communication system and let everybody know you're okay, where you're at, or what you need. And it's pretty much as simple as that.
Okay. Actually, one real quick thing. When I read that earlier about the F6, F7 are theoretically possible, they say the 99 Bridge Creek Moore tornado may have been an F6. But,
what I remember about that, out south of Newcastle, there was a housing addition, and I knew some people that they were school teachers, and they had taught at Lawton, and that weekend they had started trying to move in. They'd bought a house up there, and the house, I'm not sure, it was finished, they were moving in, but they had sodded a yard, and I think they had probably done that in the fall during the growing season. When that thing came through out there where that was at, it pulled the sod off the ground.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And there was nothing left of the house. I felt sorry for these kids. They had everything they owned either in the house or in a U-Haul truck, and it was all gone.
Well, that's why you have insurance, and that's why you have pictures.
Yep. And they had pictures of it, but they didn't even have to hire anybody to clean that up.
Yeah.
They just went in and leveled it, and leveled the yard a little bit, and they rebuilt right there where that house was at.
Yeah.
That was how serious that was.
So, okay, well, we'll wrap it up. Part of the on our website, we have a page of other websites you can go to and get information. We have quite a few weather-related ones on there. Also FEMA and a couple other ones that would be pertinent to getting information about how to prepare and what to have and whatnot. So check out the website there. It has those links to those websites for you. I guess that's it. Check us out on Facebook, on our closed page, and at 21stcenturyprepper.net. Thanks for listening.